are going to be recording this webinar. And so we will be posting that on our social media after this as well. And we can also email out the slide deck. So, but we are very, very grateful you're here today. We were hoping for a good response, but we had no idea the response that we would get. So we are pleased that we get to share this information with you and hopefully have you leave with a better understanding about the American Rescue Plan, which was the last stimulus bill, but also a better understanding of how legal aid is truly here to support our most vulnerable Nebraskans in their hopes of a brighter and stronger tomorrow. So I'm going to turn it over now to our executive director, Milo Mumgard, who will kind of get us started. We do ask that if possible, you can keep yourself on mute, and then we are going to do question and answer at the end. But you can go ahead, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or question and answer as the presentation's going, and we will do our best to get them answered by the end of this webinar. So again, thank you for being with us. And Milo, I'm going to give it to you.
Thank you, Megan. I'm Milo Mumgard. I'm the Executive Director of Legal Aid of Nebraska. And we're a very busy place with a lot of people doing lots of great work. And I thought I would turn it over now to Jen Gahn, who's our Legal Program Director, who really is going to be able to describe, I think, in greater detail about the nature of the work that we do at Legal Aid, for those of you out there who are not familiar with what we do here at Legal Aid. Jen?
Hi, thanks, Milo. Legal Aid of Nebraska is Nebraska's largest nonprofit law firm. And unlike in some criminal cases, if a person is unable to afford a lawyer, the court appoints one for them. There is no such right in most civil cases in Nebraska. Legal Aid of Nebraska is a statewide law firm, nonprofit law firm. We serve all 93 counties. We have offices in 7 locations across the state and about 100 employees. Not sure if we were going to go to the next slide. Okay. We serve 4 main legal program priority areas. So we focus on legal issues related to housing, including evictions and foreclosures, and issues around unsafe housing conditions, utility shutoffs, and security deposit returns. Children and families, in that priority, we focus on protection from abuse and neglect. We also help with juvenile record sealing and issues involving family law like divorce, custody, and child support. In our debt and finance priority, we focus on protecting income and assets on behalf of our clients. So we help people who are facing garnishment, both wage and bank garnishment. We help with issues related to bankruptcy and other debt collection issues. And in our income and benefits priority, we focus on really ensuring our clients have access to benefits that they're entitled to and income that they're entitled to. So issues involving Medicaid, SNAP, unemployment benefits, disability benefits, and unpaid wages. So those are the areas that we focus on. And I will turn it back to Milo to describe why we are here today.
So given that Legal Aid is a statewide enterprise working with our free legal services with low-income families and individuals all across the state, why the heck are we here today? The bottom line is this. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit low-income Nebraskans disproportionately hard, with so many having lost jobs and income, with continued high unemployment in the low-wage sectors of the economy that our clients work in. Our clients and your clients will need direct and intense assistance for a long time. Well, the American Rescue Plan Act, which was signed into law last month, will not only help thousands of hardworking families emerge from their pandemic economic distress, but if planned out well, planned out carefully, and used carefully, its financial assistance, its tax credits, its protections will lift thousands of them out of poverty. And as this screenshot says, indeed, we're in the midst of one of the largest increases in our social safety nets in U.S. history. Well, let's go on to the next slide. This plan, though, is is not self-effectuating. It doesn't just happen out there. But it does present an historic opportunity for low-income Nebraska families, but only if, and that is to meet their basic needs and build for the future, but only if they know what's available and how to benefit from it. The next slide. That's the bottom line. In other words, if folks do not know what's available, do not know how to access it, and do not know how to maximize it, then the bottom line is the goals of the American Rescue Plan Act and our goals, shared goals of helping families to get up and out of poverty aren't realized. Well, Legal Aid has a very long history of advising and counseling low-income clients on how the law can protect limited income and assets and how it can help stretch limited financial resources. So that's why we're here today. Our expert attorneys in housing, unemployment, healthcare, food, taxes, debt, just to name a few, which gives you an idea of the breadth of the work we do at Legal Aid, are ready to provide insights today from their expert perspectives on how low-income Nebraskans can make sure they are fully benefiting from the federal response to COVID-19. We'll go on to the next slide. So here's the big question of the day. Put yourself in the shoes of this family. I'm a low-income family wanting to maximize my benefits and opportunities under the American Rescue Plan Act. I also don't want to lose what is available and what is offered to my family. What do I need to know? Well, as you listen today, please think about this big question and send your own questions in via the chat. And as our expert attorneys go through this, go through some of the subject matter, there's no way we can talk about it all today, I assure you. There's a lot there. Each of them will tackle part of this question in the areas of, well, you'll find out. So this will give you a sense of how a particular benefit or opportunity or protection can be maximized from our expert attorney's point of view. So at the end, we'll have questions. We only have so much time. So let's go right now to our experts. Let's go to Scott Mertz, who runs our Housing Justice Project. Scott.
Yes, thank you, Milo. My name is Scott Mertz. I'm the Housing Justice Project Director here at Legal Aid of Nebraska. And so I oversee all the legal work done in the housing field. And so I'm going to discuss how the American Rescue Plan really impacts the housing needs of our client population. But I'm going to start with a bit of a tangent on an aspect of the law that really is not at all connected to the American Rescue Plan, but is still important for everyone on the call to understand, and particularly for anybody who's in need of housing assistance and eviction prevention. I'm talking about the Cdc Eviction Moratorium. Now, this, as I say, is not part of legislation. This is an administrative order from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. This has been in effect since September of 2020, and it has been extended 3 separate times and is now in effect through June 30th of 2021. So we are still operating under the CDC eviction moratorium, but it is important for anyone who is aware of this order of not only what it does, but also what it does not do. Primarily, you do have to be eligible in order to get the benefit of this moratorium. You have to take the affirmative step of signing the declaration distributed by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and identify yourself as a covered person because you have suffered some manner of loss of income, you're financially eligible, and even though you are currently behind on rent, you will take all best efforts necessary in order to seek rental assistance. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this does not apply to every eviction action, but it does apply to the majority of them, particularly any time that one is being sued for non-payment of rent. That is when this order certainly does apply. And if there's any question as to whether or not the CDC applies to your eviction action, that is why you need to contact a lawyer. And if you cannot afford one, reach out to Legal Aid of Nebraska. I also want to touch briefly on the Homeowners Assistance Fund. Again, primarily we're going to discuss today the rental assistance, as that impacts the majority of our shared clients, but I want to touch upon other things the Act does, and in this case, distribute some $10 million, $9.9 billion to be exact, to go to low-income homeowners who experience any sort of financial hardship on or after January 21, 2020. These are funds that would go to preventing mortgage delinquencies, defaults, foreclosures, loss of utility, or any home energy services for any homeowners. So that is a benefit of the Act, and that is something that is yet to be distributed here in Nebraska, but do be aware that this is what the American Rescue Plan does, and it does impact low-income homeowners. Next slide. So primarily, again, for our purposes of our shared client population, the emergency rental assistance program is where the biggest benefit is in the world of housing and low-income housing in particular. This is money, again, over $21.5 billion, and that's in addition to the billions of dollars distributed under the Appropriations Act at the end of 2020 that's going out to the community and going out to low-income Nebraskans all across the state. It's being distributed balance of state and through different agencies in Lincoln and Omaha city limits and the remainder of Douglas County outside of the Omaha city limits. This money can cover rental assistance up to 12 months of arrearages, and even individuals can apply for prospective rents in 3-month increments, so that somebody could apply for and get 3 months of rent in advance, not just the 12 months of arrearages. And not only does this go toward rental assistance itself and arrearages, but also any potential late fees, a cost associated with loss of housing, utility assistance, and even utility deposits. So that's what's available. The main question is, who can access this? How are you eligible? 3 main things to know for anybody applying for or seeking out this rental assistance. The household income has to be at or below 80% of the area median income. 2, 1 or more of the individuals in the household have to be able to document they're under a risk of loss of housing or at least housing instability. This can be done primarily through a notice from your landlord that they are demanding rent or that you've been sued for rent, but also if you can demonstrate in any way that the housing is unsafe in some way, and thus you need to be in safe housing. Primarily, the main thing for eligibility is that you demonstrate the economic loss eligibility. That is, if one in the household is eligible for unemployment, right then and there, you're eligible. But also if you can demonstrate someone in the household experienced some kind of reduction of income, significant cost, or some manner of financial hardship due to COVID-19. There are all manner of ways of which one can do this and demonstrate this. And all of the rental assistance programs are trying to work with people to accept all manner of documentation and inputting of your specific information in the application forms to just ensure that no one is being left behind and that many people are qualifying for this rental assistance as is possible. It's important, again, that people have their documentation ready, and that includes all manner of proof of income. Proof of the tenancy is a main barrier a lot of people are facing with accessing this money. Primarily be ideal if you had a lease agreement, but many low-income renters do not still possess a lease agreement. Perhaps they never got one, so many years have passed, etc. But if you can show some manner of attestation from your landlord or some other proof of your utility payments, etc., just any way that you can show that you are a renter in this address and still have rental arrearages or are in need of future rent payments, you should be eligible for this money. And with so much money currently available, we want to make sure no one is missing out, and anybody who is behind right now or otherwise financially qualifies but needs some of that prospective 3 months rent, they know that that's out there for them and that they can access it. Next slide. Okay, so a potential question: what if one is behind on rent, okay, and they've done what they need to do to apply for this rental assistance that they do qualify for, but they just haven't gotten the money yet, and their landlord is still moving forward with an eviction? This is a common problem that's going to be faced. It's currently many of our clients are facing, and people are going to be facing for the coming months. This money is available for applications all throughout the summer, but checks are not coming out right away, and certainly not the second the application is submitted, and even not after there's an approval. People are being told to wait upwards of a range of 4 to 6 weeks for this money. So we've got individuals who are eligible for this money, apply for this money, and are approved for this money, but it's important to keep in mind they still may be threatened with an eviction. So what do they need to do? They really need to get with a lawyer, and they need to get with Legal Aid of Nebraska. Really, any time an individual is threatened with an eviction, either in just a written notice or when it gets to the point where a landlord has filed suit, that is when an individual needs to talk to a lawyer. It may be that Cdc moratorium I referred to earlier may take care of that, and proof of one qualifying for that moratorium would stop the eviction dead in its tracks. it may be insufficient. And we might need to show the application process and show that individuals have attempted to cure with their breach of the lease agreement through applying, or we might need to negotiate an outcome with the landlord, even if we have no legal defense. There are all manner of things that we could do here at Legal Aid of Nebraska. But just because one has applied for and is even qualified for that rental assistance, people may still be evicted because landlords are pushing forward with evictions. And if people do not act and actually participate in their own defense, people will be evicted when they should not, even if they qualify and access and are approved for this rental assistance.
Okay, thank you, Scott, for all that information on housing. My name is Pat Caraher. I'm the supervisor of the family law cases, children and families director here at Legal Aid. The American Rescue Plan doesn't focus too much on traditional family law issues, but it certainly focuses on some tax issues, and those clearly touch on some issues that are relevant to family law. So looking at the first slide here, I just want to briefly touch on childcare and school issues. The ARP does provide billions of dollars for childcare and schools, but I've heard some people make comments like, well, I hope I can get some help with my childcare payments. Well, that's not really how it works. Now, in a minute, we'll talk about some tax breaks for people paying childcare, but as far as direct payments for childcare, those payments will not go to individuals. Instead, those are going to go to the Child Care Development Block Grant recipients, places like Head Start. And the payments for schools, again, not paid directly to students. They'll go to schools. Colleges can distribute financial aid, things like that. But if we move on to the second slide, what I really want to talk about or spend time talking about is the child tax credit. The actual child tax credit's been around a long time. As of 2020, it gave a tax credit to parents of $2,000 per child, which was great. And some of that could be refundable. What I mean by refundable is that if the tax credit takes your tax liability down to zero and actually below zero, you get the money above and beyond that, or below and beyond that. Like if you're supposed to pay $500 in taxes, but your $2,000 child tax credit takes you to zero, actually taking you to $1,500 below, you'd get that cash back up to $1,400 as of last year. That's what I mean when I say refundable. Okay, so now the ARP and the year 2021, all of those numbers get a lot better, okay? Kids 5 and under will have a tax credit of $3,600, much larger. Kids 6 and older have a credit of $3,000, and all of it is refundable. So if a family, for example, has 4 kids, maybe ages 6, 8, 10, and 12, well, that's 4 times $3,000. That is a $12,000 tax credit, and all of it is refundable. Plus, there's an early payout. You don't have to wait until you file your taxes next April. You can start getting the money as soon as July, just about 2 months from now. That's because half of the child tax credit can be paid in monthly payments starting in July of this year. So again, the same example, you got 4 kids, they're 6 or older, so you get a $12,000 tax credit. Well, half of that can be paid out early in monthly payments this year. Half of that is $6,000 paid out over 6 months. That's $1,000 a month. That's a big boost to a family's monthly income. It's like getting a stimulus check every month for 6 months in a row. In fact, there's been some talk about a 4th stimulus check coming out. And one of the reasons that might not happen is that millions of people are going to be getting these checks, which are like getting monthly stimulus checks. And if they're getting all the child tax credit payments July through December of this year, that's just a lot of money going into the pockets of families. And that might be one reason why the 4th stimulus check does not happen. Plus, remember, they still get the other half of that child tax credit money when they do their taxes next spring. So just a huge benefit to families. Now, to make sure that you get your money, you want to make sure that the IRS has your bank account information so that they put the money in the right place. The IRS will have a portal set up to update your information. You may have a new custody arrangement, or you may have a new child, you may have a new job. Well, the IRS needs to know that. And to make those changes, you need to get on that portal. Unfortunately, we cannot tell you exactly how it works because the IRS doesn't have that portal up yet. So we can't give you the exact information, but that's because we're really basically giving you up to the minute information. I check every day to see if that portal is up. It wasn't up this morning, but it might be up tomorrow. I mean, we're almost at May and it has to be up by July. So sometime in the next 8 weeks, it will be up and running, and you really need to get on that portal and update your information to make sure that the IRS pays you the right amount of money and that they pay it into the right account. Okay, looking at my third slide there, the last slide, I'll just say a few words about the dependent care credit. It's also a huge benefit to families, but it's not going to touch as many people as the child tax credit. But if you pay child care or even care for an adult, you can get this credit. There are some limitations. Child must be under 13, can't have a spouse who's available to provide the care, must be work related and so on. But there's a huge increase in the amount that you can claim. It used to be $3,000 per dependent. It's now $8,000. That's a huge jump for one dependent, or you can get $16,000 for 2 or more dependents. And again, that is all refundable. Okay, that's it for me. I guess I have a question. My order says that my ex-spouse and I alternate years for purposes of claiming our child on our taxes. My ex claimed our child on our taxes for the year 2020. Do I have to do anything to make sure I get the new child tax credit for 2021? The answer is absolutely. You do need to take action. The IRS is not going to go through everybody's divorce decree or everybody's child support order and say, oh, the father gets to claim in odd numbered years for the 2 old. They're not going to do that. The IRS is not going to go through everybody's child support order. You need to provide them with that information. If the money went into your ex-spouse's account last year, the IRS is likely to deposit it in that account again this year, unless you update the information and say, no, this year, the odd numbered year or whatever, 2021 is my year. So you got to be watching for that portal. I think it's going to be called the IRS Child Tax Credit Portal. You can Google that. And as soon as you see it's up and running, you need to put your information to make sure that your money gets deposited into your account.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. So I've still got Pat on the screen. I am Ann Mangemelli. I'm the director of our income and benefits unit. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about unemployment and the unemployment benefits that are out there. You may get to see Pat the entire time I'm talking. So the unemployment benefits are kind of an extension of what they did in 2020, but they're really extending those benefits for a longer period of time. The Rescue Act did a couple of things. There are 2 different kinds of unemployment that are available under the Rescue Act. The first one, we have it labeled as the American Rescue Plan, but I'm going to call it regular unemployment. So for those who have worked a job where their employer is covered by unemployment and they pay into unemployment, those are the individuals that are going to qualify for the regular unemployment under the American Rescue Plan. What this does, though, what the American Rescue Plan does, is it extends the weeks of payment to 53 weeks. So if you, it was previously 39 under the CARES Act. So if you were getting unemployment benefits and your benefits were going to expire under the CARES Act at 39 weeks, the American Rescue Plan extends those to 53 weeks to be paid through September 6th of 2021. So your benefits, if you qualified for regular unemployment, will extend to September 6th of 2021. What the CARES Act did and what the American Rescue Plan is adding on to is it allowed for unemployment benefits for folks that are typically not covered by unemployment benefits. Those that are self-employed, those that own a business, gig workers are one of the things that, that it specifically talks about. So for those who haven't worked for an employer, and haven't, so their employer has not paid into unemployment benefits, they qualify for federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So it's the same thing, only it is for individuals who typically would not have qualified for unemployment benefits if we weren't in a pandemic. For those that have been qualifying for or will qualify for federal pandemic unemployment compensation, it's extending their benefits for a total of 79 weeks. So 79 weeks through September 6th of 2021. Now, when you originally look at those numbers, you think, well, how come folks that are on regular unemployment only get 53 weeks, where those that are on the federal pandemic get 79 weeks? The reason for that is because if you apply for regular unemployment, you get 26 weeks automatically. So if you add the 26 to the 53, and lawyers are never very good at math, though I used a calculator for this, it's 79 weeks. So really under both programs, whether you're qualifying under regular unemployment or whether you're qualifying under federal pandemic unemployment, you get 79 weeks of unemployment benefits. In addition to that, if you qualify for either of those programs, so if you qualify for regular unemployment or the federal pandemic unemployment, they are doing an additional $300 a week through September 6th of 2021. So on top of your unemployment benefits, you're also getting an additional $300 a week added to those benefits. Additionally to that, and probably a bit more confusing, is there's a lot of individuals out there that do a little of both. They may work part-time, or they've worked for an employer and they qualify for unemployment benefits, but then they also do self-employment. The result of that is that perhaps the money that has been paid in, or the amount of hours that you've worked, you may not get a lot of money under the regular unemployment. What this additional thing is, and it's called the mixed earners unemployment, is if in 2019 you earned at least $5,000 in self-employment, plus you had a regular job and qualified for unemployment, you get an additional $100 added to your check. This is because they assume that those individuals, because they're mixed earners, their regular unemployment is not going to be as much as it should. And I should point out that you can only qualify for one or the other. If you qualify for regular unemployment, you can't also get federal pandemic unemployment and vice versa. It's one application though. So as long as you fill out one application, what they're supposed to be doing at the Department of Labor is first determining whether you qualify for regular unemployment. If you qualify for regular unemployment, that's where it stops. You get the $300 in addition to that. And then you may get this extra $100 if you've done some self-employment on the side. If they find that you don't qualify for the regular unemployment, then they're supposed to move on to step 2 and determine whether you qualify as a self-employed or a business owner under the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So it's the same application. Folks don't need to fill out a different application and try to figure out what they apply for. The good thing the Department of Labor has done is they've made just one application and their job to figure out which one you qualify for. Okay, next slide. In addition to the unemployment benefits, what they have added on with this act is subsidized Cobra benefits, which is huge for individuals who've lost their jobs. Typically, if you lose your job, you are required to carry Cobra and pay for your health insurance benefits to keep those in line for 6 months, which can be a huge, anybody who's ever had to do Cobra, it's a huge amount of money to keep your health insurance benefits in place. What the American Rescue Act has done is it actually subsidizes up to 6 months at 100% of a person's Cobra amount. So anything that you would have paid in Cobra to keep your health insurance for up to 6 months, that is going to be 100% paid for by the federal government to keep your health insurance in place. Now, if you go get another job and you have health insurance under that job, that's going to cease. So it's up to 6 months at 100%. And the reason for that is if something happens where suddenly you have other benefits, then that is going to cease. The last thing that I want to talk about is employers and paid leave. You know, under the CARES Act, if you had to take leave because you had someone that was sick in your family, you got COVID, your employer had to allow you some leave to take care of your family. They no longer have to do that. It is voluntary for employers. However, if they choose to do that, they can get a tax credit. So some employers are choosing to continue to allow leave for employees who have COVID, for employees who need to stay home and take care of maybe somebody else in their family who's sick. They can do that voluntarily. And if they do that, they get a tax credit for it. But so then they can also pay you for being on leave. And that's all that I have on my slides, but I'm sure I have a question on the next slide for me as well. So my question is, how do I prove I was self-employed in order to receive pandemic unemployment assistance? You can do this in many ways. They've gotten a little bit easier on trying to prove self-employment, but if you have a federal tax ID number, so you're self-employed or you're a business owner, and so you have, for purposes of filing taxes, you have your own business ID number. You can use that. You can use a business license. You can use your tax returns. If you can show that you had a business or that you were doing something as a self-employed or gig worker and you have taxes and that shows on your taxes, you can use those. If all else fails, you can actually do an affidavit indicating that you were self-employed. That'd be a notarized document swearing that the information in it is true. But if you have no other things to show that you were self-employed, during the year 2021 or 2020, you can actually do an affidavit and submit that to show that you were self-employed and what your wages were being self-employed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shirley Pang, and I am the Tax Law Project Managing Attorney, and I'll be talking about the stimulus payments. The eligibility for stimulus payments is $75,000 adjusted gross income for a single filing person. $112,500 is the eligibility cutoff for head of household, and $150,000 for married filing joint. There is a phase out for those amounts after. So if you make more than those threshold amounts, your stimulus payments do get reduced down until a cutoff threshold. So for the first and second payments that were issued last year, for an individual, for the first stimulus payment would be $1,200 and $500 per qualified child under 17. So if you had a child that was 17 or over, or a college student in your family that you claim on your taxes, unfortunately, they do not qualify for the $500. So the first payment, it's $1,200 per person on your tax return, plus the $500 per qualified child under 17. And then they did a second stimulus payment at the end of last year, and that amount was $600, so half of the $1,200. But a qualified child under 17, once again, also received payments of $600, so $100 more than the first payment. And then with the newest stimulus payments, the amount has increased to $1,400 per person, as well as per qualified dependent. So there's a change in language. So instead of just per qualified child, it's per qualified dependent. So this is regardless of age and regardless of whether that person is an adult, a college student, you're taking care of your parents. I mean, as long as it's a qualified dependent, you will get an additional $1,400 on your return. And so these amounts are based on the amount the person claimed on each tax return under the eligibility threshold of the adjusted gross income. If you are wondering where your stimulus payments are, you can go on the IRS website, irs.gov, and in the first homepage, the very first tab is Get My Payment. You click on that and then answer the questions, and it will tell you specific information about your stimulus payments. Unfortunately, because the first and second stimulus payment has already gone, that information is not on the Get My Payment tool. Only the payment status of the third stimulus payment is available on the Get My Payment tool. And if you're wondering if you didn't get your first and second stimulus payment, where you can claim that, you could claim unpaid stimulus check money for the first 2 stimulus payments only, not the third one, but the first 2. That can be claimed on the line 30 of either Form 1040 or 1040 SR on this year's taxes. The deadline to file your 2020 taxes have been moved up to May 17th, 2021. So you have a couple more weeks to meet that deadline to file. And so in order to get your first and second stimulus payments, if you haven't gotten that already, you need to file your taxes. If you haven't received your third payment and you don't see it on your Get My Payment tool on the IRS website, you just have to wait until next year's taxes to file your recovery rebate credit. And if you do receive your stimulus payment, you should receive a notice, an IRS notice 1444, and that will just explain what you got, the amount you got, and you want to save that notice for your tax preparer. So you'll get a notice 1444A for the first payment, 1444B for the second payment, and 1444C for your third payment. And then for unemployment, Ann Mangiamelli already talked about the qualifications for getting additional unemployment income. And generally, unemployment income is taxable. The entire amount is taxable. But for 2020 only, so last year, if you did receive unemployment income, the federal government will not tax the first $10,200 of unemployment income received by an individual. So if for married couples, if one spouse earned $15,000 of unemployment income, the first $10,200 is not taxable, and the rest of the remaining unemployment income is taxable. But if each spouse received $10,000 in unemployment income, none of it is taxed because that both incomes are under $10,200. Some states will still continue to tax the full amount, but if you live in Nebraska, they are following the federal rules, and therefore the first $10,200 is not taxable.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shailana Dunwell. I am a fellowship tax attorney in the tax project here at Legal Aid. So I apologize, but I'm going to throw some more numbers at you. I know that you've been getting a lot of those. Hopefully with the slides being sent out after the presentation, that'll make it a little more clear. I know it's a lot of information. So first, I'm going to talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit, or sometimes EIC or EITC. This is something a lot of you may be familiar with. It is a tax credit given to low and middle income, generally families who have some sort of W-2 wages or earned income. So for 2020, the amount of EITC ranges from $538 to $6,660. And this amount depends on the filing status, how many children the individual is able to claim as dependents, and the amount of W-2 wages or earned income that that person has. There are a lot of big changes in 2021. So EITC range is going to increase. The biggest thing you'll see on the slides is the low level amount is gonna about triple. So for individuals who are very low income, and especially individuals who have no dependent children, this is going to be a huge amount of increased income. So to qualify for EITC, an individual must show proof of earned income, have to have at least $1 of earned income. Generally, this is W-2 wages. Pension, Social Security, and unemployment do not count. You have to have investment income below $36.50 in the tax year you claim the credit. However, for next year's taxes, there is a change to that. So for the year 2021 only, that will be increased to $10,000. So if an individual has been playing the stock market more this year than typical, and they have investment income above that $3,600 amount, they may still be eligible for EITC for 2020. They have to have a valid social security number. Generally, they cannot be filing in a married filing separately status, though this will also be changing for the year 2021. They must be a US citizen or resident alien. So there is an interactive EITC assistant tool on irs.gov, and I will drop that link in the chat in just a moment. And that's a calculator you or your clients can use to find out eligibility, if qualifying children or relatives count as dependents, the estimated amount of the credit. For people in less common situations, such as some military statuses or clergy members who have slightly different qualifications, the EITC assistant can be really helpful in figuring out whether or not the individual or family qualifies for EITC. And there's a lot of individuals, approximately 20% in Nebraska, who are eligible to get EITC, which, as we saw in the last slide, is a pretty sizable amount of money for those who qualify, but don't file taxes because their income is low enough that they're not required to. And so that's something that we really encourage you to talk with your clients about and make sure that they're aware of EITC, because that amount of money can be really life-changing for lower income populations. And all you need to do to get it, if you qualify, is file taxes. So you just need W-2s, 1099s, other documents showing your taxes withheld, basically everything you get in the mail in January. Next slide. Okay, so here's some other changes to EITC for 2021. I referenced these a little bit earlier. So the amount of EITC an individual is eligible for increases with each dependent, but it can also be claimed by somebody with no dependents. A student who is age 24 or older can claim EITC, or if a student is 19 and older, but a former foster child, they can also claim EITC. One change to EITC eligibility as part of the American Rescue Plan Act is that workers who are aged 65 and over will be able to claim EITC if they have earned income for the first time. So this is going to help a lot of the impoverished elderly, which is great. The eligibility in 2021 is going to be doubled for people without dependents. People without dependents have always been able to claim EITC, but you had to make less than $15,000 a year and not be anybody else's dependent, which makes it very difficult for someone without dependents to qualify. With that amount doubled, it's going to really increase the number of people that are eligible and also the amount that they're able to get. There's also a change this year, as I mentioned earlier, that people filing as married filing separately are going to be able to claim EITC if they can demonstrate a few different circumstances. And we think this is going to help victims of domestic violence. So that's awesome. Next slide. I didn't get my stimulus payment. What do I do? So like Shirley mentioned earlier, it depends a little bit on which stimulus payment the individual didn't get. For the $1,200 or $600 payments that were made last year, the individual is going to have to file a tax return for 2020, and on line 30, they will indicate that they didn't get any stimulus money, and they will get that amount added on to their tax refund as a refund or recovery rebate credit. For the current, most recent $1,400 stimulus payment, about half of those have gone out now. So there's a lot of people who will still be getting them, but if The IRS doesn't have bank information, and the easiest way to know that is if the first 2 stimulus payments came as a paper check or debit card. Those have not all been mailed out yet. So you can use the Check My Payment tool that was dropped in the chat. Otherwise, if in another month or so, the individual still hasn't gotten that stimulus payment, you'll just file for a recovery rebate credit on your next year's taxes, like Shirley discussed.
My name's Lee Robleski. I advise low-income consumers on how to deal with debt collectors. I'm the final presenter, and I'll move through this quickly, so we've got a little bit of time for questions. The most important thing to know about debt collectors is that they make money because they exaggerate and lie, they will harass, they intimidate, they will say pretty much anything to get money, and they are not on the side of consumers who may not realize that they have protections under the law, but that they have to raise those protections. They are not automatic in all instances, and they are not going to be raised by a debt collector. In Nebraska, the debt collectors use the courts to collect even very small debts. We have seen debt collection lawsuits for even $5 debts that are owed. There are laws that protect low-income consumers. And so just so you're aware, there are federal and state laws that protect consumers by limiting the frequency and the type of creditor contact. If you have a client who is being harassed and you're concerned that the statements are illegal, please refer them to legal aid. We can screen them and assist them or refer them to someone who can help with federal consumer protection laws. We also have the state attorney general who will take complaints about collectors. In Nebraska, a lot of the work that legal aid does is help protect income and property for low-income people. In Nebraska, exemptions are the protections from debt collection. So for example, if you have a car that's worth $1,500, your car is exempt from debt collection. The collector that's asking you about your car is not going to tell you that your car is protected from debt collection. They may act like they can take it from you. They will certainly send the sheriff out and make you file paperwork to go to court and explain to the judge that the only vehicle you have is worth $1,500. So there's a lot of time that's necessary for consumers if they are going to try and protect their property. Some property is automatically protected. The easiest example of that is Social Security money. Social Security money is protected by the federal government. There are federal laws that say that debt collectors cannot take Social Security funds. Again, that does not mean that debt collectors aren't going to call people who are on Social Security. They will still try and garnish a bank account knowing someone's on Social Security. They will summon people to court to ask them questions about their income and their assets, even if they know that their income is Social Security. That's why it's really important to talk to a lawyer that is not a collections lawyer to get advice about what you should do if you're dealing with a debt collector. Next slide. So when we were putting this presentation together, one of the things we wanted to bring up is how to help clients consider how to spend their stimulus payments and their income tax refunds. This has been a huge influx of money for a lot of low-income people. We encourage people to start with what have you been putting off that you need. So for example, getting the brakes fixed on your car, maybe a repair to your house that is dangerous. Or I had a client who bought brand new pants in size long for the first time in her life. She had always bought pants at the thrift store. So helping clients think through what is the best use of this stimulus payment. What I have found is that clients often feel a lot of guilt when they owe debt, and they may make decisions based on guilt that are not in their financial best interest. So I usually will advise people, this is what Congress wants. This is what the unicameral wants. They do not want you to sell your $1,500 car to pay your medical bill because you need that car to get to work. So I think helping clients and helping them deal with their guilt is an important part of helping them make decisions about how to spend their stimulus payment. It's really important that clients have a realistic budget and that they are maximizing all of their benefits. So for example, the rent assistance that Scott talked about is not intended, if it's not as if you've gotten a stimulus payment, so you should use that to pay your rent. You should maximize any benefit that's available to you. So getting the free broadband through Allo, getting a reduced lunch at the school for your children, collecting unemployment if you're entitled to the unemployment. So again, helping low-income people deal with the guilt that they have about taking those benefits, I think is an important part of helping them make the best financial decisions for themselves and their family. And that is what Congress wants. Congress really wants to help this particular group of individuals crawl themselves out of this hole that they have found themselves in, not just this year, but in many years prior. A low-income budget is very different than a middle-income budget. And so unfortunately, paying the loudest and scariest creditor is sometimes what happens because that's what people think they have to do or should do, and it's not what's best for their family. So my question had to do with wage garnishment. So if a client has not spent their stimulus payment, let's say in their bank account, and they've gotten a notice of wage garnishment, what should that individual do? So this is a great example of a loud, scary creditor finding out that there is a court order that your wages are about to be garnished is probably the scariest thing that our clients experience. And so helping that client understand, first of all, what that wage garnishment is going to look like, whether they even earn enough money for their wages to be garnished, how much that would reduce their paycheck, and then what things they need from their stimulus payment. So for example, it might make more sense to purchase a car with cash that's worth less than $5,000 so that they can get back and forth to work and not have a monthly car payment coming out, and then just dealing with the wage garnishment if the amount that's being taken out of their paycheck is something that they can work into their budget. So that's just one example of how that question could be answered. But again, that's something that you should make sure the client is getting legal advice that's oriented towards a low income budget. And that's it. So I think now we're ready to try and rush through some questions.
We're going to let Marnie talk about how to reach us real quick. We know we are probably going to go over to ensure that we can get your questions answered. If you need to drop off and you want to shoot me an email that one of your questions is one that needs what you would like answered, we will try our hardest to get that answer for you via email.
Good afternoon. Your clients can access Legal Aid of Nebraska services a variety of ways. We're available, they can file an application online at legalaidofnebraska.org by clicking, I think, Get Online Help. They can call our access lines, which are open. I'll give you the hours in just a minute, but the telephone number is there on your screen. For the disaster, no, it's not on the screen. For the disaster relief hotline, though, which is what your clients would call at this point in time, or the housing hotline, it is 1-844-268-5627. And is there any way we can get the Housing Justice Task Force line up there?
We can put it in the chat, Marnie.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So thank you all for attending, and we'll get to your questions now.
One of the questions that we had is there enough attorneys to do all the work? As a nonprofit, I think we all know there's never enough staff to get all the work done. I can tell you that we have a very hardworking staff, and we are trying to help as many people as possible. as often as we can. So the best thing that we can say to you all is please don't hesitate to reach out to us so that we can try to help you with your issues. So that is do we have enough attorneys? We could always use more, but we are trying. So, and then Jen, Gon, do you have some questions ready to ask some of our panelists?
Yes. So Scott Mertz, I will ask you this question. It was in terms of the housing, the rental assistance, and what does 80% of the area median income look like? How would you find out that information?
Well, a couple places. HUD would distribute, again, based upon your county and your geographic area. And you're going to want to cross-check the number with the size of the household. But I would say, as an example, in Omaha and at Match Connect, which is fielded in the Omaha rental assistance applications, that they have this chart. If you were a household of 4, as long as your household income was below $69,600, you would qualify. And furthermore, just what would they look at to determine income? You can go either by your 2020 AGI and your tax returns, or they would look at more recent pay stubs, various months of income, if that would also be more beneficial for your application. It's either option seems to work, at least for Omaha.
Thanks, Scott. Anne, this one is for you. The question is, I've been seeing a lot of cases of self-employed individuals getting federal pandemic unemployment insurance that are being asked to pay it back in large sums. Is there a reason for this or a way to address this? Many are filing appeals and hearing nothing.
Well, it's kind of a two-part question. First, yes, I'm hearing a lot of that as well. I think there was a lot of misinformation when the CARES Act first came out, and everyone thought if you're unemployed, go ahead and file. But really what you were supposed to do is if you were unemployed as a result of COVID. And so I think that a lot of people were approved that probably shouldn't have been, but the Department of Labor has also denied benefits for folks that should have been approved. And so now they're coming back and saying, well, we've decided you shouldn't have been approved, and so we want all of our money back. Yes, you can actually appeal that. And I know the question says that people are appealing and not hearing anything. Those appeals are taking 5 months in some instances to get through to the fair hearing. I think they're catching up a little bit now. We've had several that have gone a little bit quicker than that, but unfortunately the appeals themselves are taking quite a long time. I think that my only explanation is that when they got so many unemployment appeals or cases to begin with, that they approved a lot of people, and now they're re-examining those and coming back and probably approved some people that shouldn't have been approved, but also they're making mistakes and saying that they shouldn't have approved people that really should have been getting benefits. So I say appeal. Unfortunately, you're going to have to wait a while. You can apply at legal aid. We are taking, as long as they fit within our guidelines, we are taking those unemployment cases and representing people at the fair hearings.
Thanks, Anne. Here's another question. Are there income guidelines for the this child tax credit, and more so the earned income credit versus the child tax credit?
So for the child tax credit, it is based on your 2021 income. And because it's an advanced credit being paid out in July, yes, it is based on this year's income. And so if you don't think you're going to qualify for 2021, then you don't want to get that money early in case you need to pay it back. So you want to go into that portal that hasn't been up yet, but will be on the irs.gov website, and update your income if you've made more than last year. And for the expanded child tax credit, the income eligibility is the same as the stimulus payments. So it's $75,000 for single filers, $112,500 for head of household, and $150,000 for married filing joint. For the $2,000 child tax credit that is available for most people, that eligibility is $400,000 for a married filing joint and $200,000 for everybody else. So there's two different child tax credits. One is the original amount, $2,000 with $1,400 refundable, and the expanded child tax credit that Pat was talking about, that's the stimulus payments eligibility guidelines, and that is all refundable.
Let's see here. Lee, there's a question about exempting property. Personal property is exempt from debt collection if it's below 5,000. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And that's per adult. So if it's a married couple, they can have up to $10,000 in personal property. It's what a lot of people call the wild card exemption. So it can include really anything. That's where bank accounts are going to fit. If somebody has a small camper or a small boat, which, you know, is pretty common in Nebraska, that's what that property is going to need to fit into the personal property category. There is not a specific exemption for the stimulus funds. And so the stimulus funds need to be exempted as personal property. We have had some creditors that have garnished bank accounts that have stimulus funds, and it's required that the debtor or the consumer file a request for a hearing to show the court that those funds should be exempt as personal property.
Thanks, Lee. Here's another question. There's multiple questions regarding the child tax credit. Is the child tax credit based on 2021 income?
Yes.
If an individual didn't qualify for a tax credit based upon, let's see here, due to income in 2020, will they still be eligible for the credit?
It depends on your income for 2020. If it's above what the stimulus payment eligibilities are, then you do not qualify. But if you think you will be below the eligibility amount in 2021, then you want to update your income in that portal. That's not up yet. But if you are not sure, you want to wait till you file your taxes for next year and then claim that child tax credit.
If someone is 18 years old and a college student and not working, would they qualify to receive the stimulus payment?
Typically, if you're 18, you're a college student and you're not working, you are your parents' dependent. And for the first and second stimulus payments, those dependents that are college students do not qualify. But for the third stimulus payment, that includes college student dependents. But if you are not a dependent, then you can go ahead and file your taxes and claim those stimulus. But if you are someone's dependent, you cannot double dip and get two stimulus payments.
I just want to clarify, like Shirley said, if you're a college student, you're eligible for the third payment, but it will go to the person claiming you. So that's probably going to be your parents going to get that $1,400. So it's going to be a family conversation about whether it gets passed along or not.
And if your parents are over eligibility, then you do not qualify.
For Scott, are you finding landlords assisting tenants to apply for rental assistance rather than pursue eviction only?
Yes, certainly we have seen this happen, and that highlights a big distinction between this rental assistance program and that under the CARES Act, which is that landlords can't even initiate the application process, but they would need the landlords, even the cooperation and participation of their tenants, much in the same way that if tenants initiate this, they're going to need the landlords to eventually agree to take the money. And if you certainly are finding that you do qualify and are approved for rental assistance, just but for the cooperation of the landlord, another good reason to refer someone to Legal Aid of Nebraska, because though we don't have the means to make individuals take money, we could certainly help prevent that landlord from ever coming after that tenant to recover anything that had been accessed and approved by the tenant, and just but for that lack of cooperation from the landlord, they would have gotten that money.
And maybe we can end after this next set of questions and then try to answer other questions by just when we follow up with the email with the slides. So here's a question. I've worked with clients that have contacted legal aid for assistance, but have been denied because they previously received assistance or there's a conflict. Should agencies continue to refer clients to legal aid if they've already received assistance? And I can answer that question. And it's yes, you should continue to refer your clients to legal aid for assistance. And we have certain professional ethical rules where a conflict of interest may exist, and it may exist for one particular issue, but not for other issues. So we may have helped somebody with a divorce case, but now they're being evicted. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't apply for assistance with the eviction case, for example. And it probably wouldn't be a conflict for us to represent them, depending upon what their situation was. And then the last question is, for purposes such as ADC or SNAP, will the additional stimulus per child in each household be counted into the budget the same way unemployment as unemployment or child support?
No, stimulus payments are separate. They do not count towards any of the public funding that you can get.
Okay, I hope that we have answered the majority of everyone's questions. I realize that we are over time, but we are so grateful that you were able to join us today. Again, we will be sending out the slides as well as have the recording online. So we will be getting that to you by the end of the week. If you have questions after that, we encourage you or your clients to contact our access lines so that we can provide as much legal assistance as possible, especially in these times. And we are so grateful for the work that you all are doing across the state.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Appreciate it.